It is Friday, November 10th, 2023. This is another edition of Football Today. You know that dude from the Talking Giants world, Bobby Skinner. I am Chris Rose, producer Mikey, along for the ride as well. And I'm actually up in Jersey City, New Jersey, as we're finishing up Blitzball Battle 4. And it's been epic, by the way, so far. Everybody's going to love it when it comes out in a few months.
Who
in the
won?
meantime, Bobby, yeah, I'm going to tell you that. If I tell you that, it'll be our last episode of Football Today. Probably not a great idea.
Maybe they'd have to put in more resources to Football Today.
Maybe. By the way, I'm like 5 miles or something from your New York Giants. You couldn't have rolled up here and done a show so we could be in the same studio or something?
I know. You guys just got to start planning Blitzball around me, which
yes.
usually I end up randomly being there when that happens. But I'm nice and happy in Florida.
All right, so, Bobby, Week 10 already underway. The slate not nearly as good as we saw in Week 9, but let's pick a few of the headline matchups. Pair of teams that are coming off byes. Jacksonville Jaguars are playing host to the San Francisco 49ers, who it feels like, you know, their 5-0 start was eons ago, right? They've lost 3 straight. Brock Purdy, the magic fairy dust has kind of gone away with him. So is this the Sunday that the Niners get back on track, or are you still worried?
Well, they're both coming off bye weeks, right? So we can't do the bye week rust versus rest.
Right.
I do think so, right? Like, and the 49ers need to tighten it up, though. And again, come out non-rusty. They are more talented than the Jags, although the Jags have been playing really well, especially when you look at some like the EPA numbers. Like they're, the last 5 games, they've been like top of the league and offense and defense. But at the end of the day, the 49ers should be a better team and are a better team, and I do think San Fran ends up taking it. The matchup I'm looking forward to, though, is Josh Allen versus the backup left tackle, because I don't think Trent is coming back this week.
Well, we'll see. I mean, it's obviously been a rough go for him. He missed a little bit of the Browns game, and then obviously the last 2 losses as well. Here's the thing. Jacksonville, they are off to their best 8-game start since 1999. Do you know what happened that year for them?
AFC Championship, Tom Coughlin.
That's right. That is the AFC Championship game that they lost somehow to the Tennessee Titans that year. So they are playing really good football. With San Francisco, when they jumped out to that 5-0 start, they were barely turning the ball over. They had only 2 turnovers. But in these 3 losses, they've turned it over 7 times, and Brock Purdy's thrown it all over a little bit. So that's the key. One huge facet, though, for the Niners is that it sounds like Debo's coming back. And Debo's one of those guys, I don't know if you agree with me, he doesn't have to touch the ball 12 to 15 times a game in order to have such a huge impact. I think the threat of having him in so many different areas lined up out wide, in the backfield, put him in motion, whatever, it affects the defense.
Well, that, and even if he just has 3 catches, those 3 catches can go for like 70 yards, right? And he's, made able to make those big, tough catches down the field, even though he's not always used like that. This to me, though, is, hey, what did Brock Purdy learn after these last 3 weeks? You get the bye week to rest and recharge. The coaches not as much. Like, what have the 49ers learned offensively to stop those turnovers from happening, specifically those, the middle of the field, 10 to 20 yard range where almost all of Purdy's have come from, besides that fluky one.
I do like the Niners in this one a little bit. It is a show me game for Jacksonville. I know they beat Buffalo. That was over in London when the Jags had already been there for a week plus. The Bills got over there like 55 hours before kickoff. So we'll see. This is one of those huge games for Jacksonville. I think it's going to be a ton of fun. And in my opinion, they should have flexed into this for Sunday Night Football. Let's move to one of the other bigger games of the day. It'll happen in the AFC North with the Ravens. They check in with a 7-2 record. That includes a 3-0 mark against teams that entered the game against Baltimore with a winning record. So that was Cleveland, Detroit, and Seattle. And in those 3 games, the opposition of the Ravens never had a lead. Is that sort of dominance going to continue this weekend?
I think this game will be tight, right? But to me, Baltimore ends up winning out because Baltimore has 2 really good units, offense and defense, where the Browns is just that defense. If you like, we could talk about how great the Browns defense is, and I still think they're the best in the NFL, and most numbers show that too. But the Ravens are second. Behind them, right? And then they have Lamar Jackson and an offense that's working kind of well. But I want to see, as now Deshaun Watson's back. They beat the Cardinals. That's, we're not going to really look at that one to see what the health of the Browns offense is. Can they get their rushing game going? Because right now it's just average. Like, if I'm Kevin Stefanski, I am really leaning into trying to make the running the ball the identity, and then just, letting Watson do some play action. He can still make all the throws. But, like, this is, to me, with Watson in it compared to DTR in the last game, this is very winnable for the Browns, right? You're going to look at that score as 28-3, but the Ravens had 2 touchdowns off of 2 turnovers, so 48 yards on on 2 of their touchdown drives. Ravens had 2.6 yards per play. Or, sorry, the Browns did, right? Like, you're going to expect them to be better than that. That's, like, worse than the NFL that week. And the Ravens had 8 punts and turnovers in that game, including, 8 of 12 drives with 10 yards or less. So, this Browns defense this Browns offense should hopefully lean into, like, a run identity and not turning over the ball. Like, that being their identity, despite the fact that Deshaun Watson's the highest paid player in the NFL. Lean into that, because the defense will at least keep it close to the end of the game.
Okay, obviously you know this as a Browns fan. This really worries me to death because I know Philadelphia's got the best record in the NFL. I think Baltimore's playing the best football. And you mentioned it's because of both sides of the football, and we know what their kicking game can do, obviously. I'm also worried about one huge thing in this. What's your favorite position to study, Bobby?
Offensive line?
Offensive line. Bingo, my man. The Browns, they're banged up all over the place. DeJuan Jones has done an outstanding job replacing Jack Conklin at right tackle. He's been injured. He's been limping around. He's got a bad shoulder. We don't know what's going on. More importantly, though, Jed Wills, who has been the punching bag of all of Cleveland over the last 3.5 years, is out now. He ripped up his knee. He's expected back at some point this year, but it's not for the foreseeable future. So what are they going to do over there? Is it James Hudson? Is it Joel Bitonio that they push out from guard to tackle? This could be a mess against that Baltimore defense, which certainly can give you some exotic looks. They can blitz Kyle Hamilton from his safety spot. They're really physical. That's the sort of stuff where it can get away. And if Watson gives up the football like he did in the early going in a big AFC North road game in Pittsburgh earlier this year, it's going to spell trouble for the Brown and Orange.
Yeah, and that's why I think the Browns should just lean into that identity. Like, again, I'm not saying they're going to be a good offense doing that, but their defense is good enough to hang in these games. And as much as, and Deshaun's talented enough to make the offense be average.
Yeah.
If they can just lean into, running the ball and not turning it over. I know new age football people hate that shit, but with the way this defense is, man, again, you look at that 28-3 game versus the Ravens, and that's a couple plays away from being a lot closer game with nobody at quarterback.
Yeah.
The issue is just, again, if the Ravens had the 10th best defense, I think that the Browns could possibly pull this one out, but they're the second best defense, and I think they're going to give the Browns fits offensively all game long.
And here's the thing. The Browns know Lamar Jackson and what he does so well, right? Now, I know that they've got a different defensive coordinator in here in Jim Schwartz, who's done a remarkable job. But do you remember the Sunday night game a few years ago where Lamar Jackson threw 4 interceptions and somehow the Ravens still won that game? I'm not saying that Cleveland needs to force 4 turnovers, but Lamar's been known to, cough it up in the pocket occasionally, maybe make a bad throw. That's the sort of formula, I think, in order for Cleveland to pull off the upset win on the road. But we'll see. Could be a really good game. Are you more interested in a possible shootout between the Lions and Chargers, or if young C.J. Stroud can continue his magic in Cincinnati?
I feel like I've got a good grasp on Lions and Chargers, and not going to have a big takeaway from that game. I am excited to see what Stroud can do, right? Because the Bengals defense has held the 49ers and Bills and Seahawks to 16 points per game, none over 20. And Stroud isn't just out there doing half-field high to low reads or pure progress, not kind of rookie, let's bring him along slowly stuff. He's moving defenders, he's anticipating, reading leverage. But Anarumo, who uses the most diverse coverages in the NFL, is going to throw a lot at him. So even if the Bengals win, I'm still fascinated to see how C.J. Stroud handles this Bengals defense.
Yeah, and by the way, Joe Burrow is pretty good these days. But with Stroud, just look at his game-winning drive against Tampa Bay last week. There was that one ball that he threw over one defender and short of another on the sideline during the game-winning drive. Like, that sort of stuff is just magical. Like, that's the experienced pro, not a guy who's played less than half a season as a starter in the NFL. Plus, I think it's a big deal for him. Like, I know he's a California kid. He grew up going to, playing high school ball out in Southern California, but he is a former Buckeye. And so we're talking about that being 100 miles away from Cincinnati. So he's going to have some friends that are down there cheering him on. And I think that's a big deal for this kid.
Yeah, and I think a lot of Bengals fans are like secretly like the Texans are probably their number 2 team right now because of C.J. Stroud. I'm like I said, I'm really interested. Like, if he looks good in this game, man, like you're already saying like this guy's the next thing. But if he looks good in this, man, that's next level shit. Where again, I just mentioned 3 teams with good offenses that the Bengals like really took care of. The issue is just that even though they won't have T. Higgins, the Bengals offense is probably just going to put up more points on the other side. So it could be a Texans loss and a C.J. Stroud win, though.
It actually could be a Texans loss and a Texans win. I mean, they already have more wins than they did all of last year. People don't expect them to win the division, right? That's Jacksonville's division to have. They don't expect them to be a wild card team because of the abundance of talent in the AFC North in particular. But just to be in games that matter midway through and then later on in the season, I think is a huge stepping stone for this organization. And C.J. Stroud has just been wonderful to watch. All right, let's move to a little Sunday night football. The revamped Raiders take on the New York Jets. Yes, the Jets are rammed down our primetime throats yet again. Sounds like New York is sticking with Zach Wilson at quarterback. Now, Coach Robert Saleh was actually on Michael Kay's radio show in New York City, and he faced the heat of a blitz.
I never understood with a 39-year-old quarterback why a guy who couldn't start last year was the first line of defense if he went down. You've got Trevor Siemian in your building. Why not give him a try?
No, I got you. No, it's again the fair question, and it's like I said, he I don't know. You got me. I'm gonna plead the fifth on all this one.
In your opinion, do you think that Robert Saleh is being pressured into sticking with Zach Wilson?
As bad as Zach Wilson is, right? And I love the whole he's getting better because he had 4 good throws versus the Chiefs. He's bad. At least he can move around a little bit, right? Which is so valuable for a bat. Just be able to move around a little bit. Where Simeon, I don't know if he's going to do that. So I think they might just genuinely want to play him also. And I also think Nate Hackett still sucks, right? Just because Aaron Rodgers likes him doesn't mean he's a good offensive coordinator. They're doing worse than they were with Mike Lombardi, which everyone at the time said was a very weird firing. Who would it be being pressured by? Ownership?
Yeah, I don't quite get it. I think they look at Trevor Siemian as a guy who's bounced around the league, even though he does have a Super Bowl ring with Denver, I believe. And they're like, listen, I mean, this is the administration that made Zach Wilson the 2nd overall pick. So they're going to say, at the very least, if Aaron Rodgers is not coming back anytime soon, we got to go with the guy who we picked number 2 overall, because what an embarrassment that would be for us and our evaluation skills and what we mean as a franchise if we're going to go with a guy who was a 7th-round pick out of Northwestern.
Yeah, I mean, they already benched him for Chris Stravler mid-game last year and Mike White.
Ouch.
This is where I get, if I was a Jets fan, I'd be so frustrated. And I know they love to do, Aaron Rodgers is going to mentor him in the offseason because everything's fucking dandy in the offseason. Why is Zach Wilson on this roster? One, it's just weird after everything that went down last year. And 2, he's not a good option as a backup quarterback. Why did they not? Even if Aaron Rodgers didn't have a season-ending injury, right? Get a backup QB that if he had a 4 or 5 game injury that could get you along. That being said, I think the Jets will win this week.
Wow. Really? On the road?
I do. I think that defense is really, really good. And I think the Raiders, coming off of that interim win, I think the stuff that O'Connell does well, the Jets are just going to clamp down on. And I think the Jets defense carries them to. And the Raiders off defense is really bad, despite the fact that the Giants only put up 6 points. Tommy DeVito had 8.8 yards per attempt, which is the Giants' second best. His issue is just anytime there's a blitz, he just puts his eyes down.
Oh, yeah.
and just bad arm talent in general. So I think the Jets win this game like 20-7.
By the way, just so that we dot all our I's and cross all our T's, Robert Saleh did say, in terms of talking with management about Zach Wilson staying at quarterback, quote, "We're all on the same page with that. So any conspiracy theory that might be out there, we are on the same page." I think
he needs to
believe
stop
that.
addressing every little Twitter rumor with that shit. Just do your job. He gets very like. I think Saleh gets like over infatuated with like outside noise. Yes,
but I think what happened was he was embarrassed by what he said or didn't say on the Michael Kay show. I really do. I think that. I mean, how often have you heard a head coach literally speechless and say, "I don't know how to answer that. Like I plead the fifth." Like that's not coach speak.
Yeah, I mean, he answered the question, and then they're like, "Yeah, but why not?" And he's just like, "I have already answered that." So I don't know, but I do think they'll win this game and get back to what 5-5 they'll be.
Yeah, right.
You think the Raiders win?
You know what? Here's the thing. So the Jets are on the road. I'll be curious to see on a Sunday night how many Jets fans travel. I mean, we've talked about that before with, the allure of Vegas, and now you wrap up a big weekend with the boys and whatnot, and you get to check out the New York Jets. I don't know. It could be – I'm not saying it's going to be like a Chargers situation at SoFi or when the Rams host the Niners, but it could be interesting fan split. Could be like a bowl game.
I want to ask you this. I thought about getting really petty because all the Giants-Jets stuff.
Yeah.
Did you see like the 20 – because the reaction to that was nuts. I thought about waiting until 24 seconds left in the game and like quote tweeting Jets fans and be like, well, relax, guys. There's 24 seconds left. But I do feel bad for them. That defense is great, right? Like I sat there and unfortunately, I sat there and watched fucking tape of the Giants running the ball every play and then the first half. And they just close in on everything, and then they rush the passer without having the blitz. Like, that's a great defense. And you could say Rodgers next year, but eventually those defenses like start to fade, right? Defense
Absolutely.
doesn't replicate year over year. And they've done it 2 years in a row with the worst offense possible.
Yeah, it's got to be frustrating for that group. There's no question about it. But somehow the Jets have kind of stuck in this, at least record-wise. All right, before we get out of here, real interesting story kind of in Pittsburgh, right? As the Steelers get ready for the Packers, Mike Tomlin, he had to answer some questions about George Pickens and social media. Late last week, of course, the Steelers played on Thursday Night Football, took care of the Tennessee Titans, but George Pickens didn't do much. There was that shot after Deontay Johnson actually scored a touchdown for the first time in like 7 or 8 years, of Pickens sitting solemnly on the sidelines and all that sort of stuff. And then he ended up scrubbing all of his Steelers stuff from his social media. So guess what? Mike Tomlin had to answer questions about it. Coach?
Like breathing. It's easy. I know it's a cute story for you guys, but it is a pebble in my shoe, to be quite honest with you, in terms of the things that I have to do in an effort to get this group ready to play this week.
I love it. So Mike Tomlin, quite the wordsmith, says it was a pebble in my shoe. Do you think it's more than just that?
Well, I think a pebble in the shoe is pretty damn annoying if you ever had a pebble in your shoe. A pebble in your shoe needs to be dealt with directly or it'll ruin your day. If you always have a pebble in your shoe or a sprained toe, I think I'd rather deal with a sprained toe on a consistent basis. Yeah, he's got to deal with that, right? Like this is the Pickens playbook, right? It's like all this ability, but he's immature, right? And I can deal with some of that, but he should have dragged his toe on that touchdown. They ended up beating the Titans too. Like this is where I'd be frustrated if I was a Steelers fan. Like, dude, we're winning. Like and like to me, the scrubbing the social media thing is the most immature shit that players do. And I think so, even more so in season. It's one thing in the off season when it's the contract, all that stupid, trying to gain buzz around it. Okay, fine. But a second-year player in the middle of the season when you're winning, like that shit is to me is so immature. Like I think that's more immature than like fighting, right? Like I look at George Pickens taking that Georgia Tech player and slamming him into the wall. I think this is more immature than doing that.
Najee Harris apparently came out and said, listen, I talked George down a little bit. We went over some stuff. And if he did, I know that he's a really young guy in that locker room too. But if he did that, good for him. That's the thing you always heard about Pickens. People are like, how is that guy not like the first receiver off the board? This is how he wasn't the first receiver off the board. And it just feels like there's certain guys involved in any business, but since sports is an entertainment business, particularly entertainment, where you have to walk on eggshells around them. And I'm not saying that George Pickens makes people miserable, because that's not fair of me to say. I'm not in the Steelers locker room. I don't deal with him on a daily basis, and I've never talked to him. But those are the rumors that you heard about him, and this sort of stuff is just unacceptable. It is. Now, I do believe Mike Tomlin from this standpoint, that even though you felt like a pebble in your shoe can be really annoying, and I tend to agree with you, remember, he dealt with a boulder in his underwear, which was Antonio Brown. Like, that is a real problem. You know, Mike Tomlin should be encased in glass in Canton, Ohio, just for dealing with Antonio Brown as long as he had to. Somehow he made it through. And now the George Pickens of the world, he's like, yeah, that's not a big deal. And by the way, I'm not sure I love the whole boulder in your underwear sort of deal, but I was trying to stick with the pebble in his shoe sort of deal.
I'm not going to make any jokes. If there's one coach you could think, like you said, could deal with it pretty well, it is Pickens, right? Or Tomlin, where he can speak man to man to these guys and give them some tough love. But you do have to deal with it. Like, it's not something you can just flat out ignore.
Yeah.
And this is how it always happens, though, right? Like, it becomes, okay, this isn't a big deal. This isn't a big deal. But those are always signs. Anytime you're talking about a young player and you're on your fourth, this isn't that big deal, it's on its way to becoming a big deal every single time. And it's funny. Like, I'm dealing with this right now that people are starting to see it with Xavier McKinney with the Giants, right? Mm-hmm. There's been some little things. He took shots at Judge and Graham on the way out for no reason, which in reality, they got the best out of him. Little thing. And I finally start pointing it out. People are like, oh, you're making a big deal. And now his coaches are like pissed off with him, and like visibly so. This is not a big deal in the big picture of this thing, but it's just like you said, signs. And eventually it's going to be go into a big deal. Not as big of a deal as Antonio Brown ended up being with the Steelers, but we can't compare everything to the biggest, head case we've ever seen in the NFL.
George Pickens, he did say, I don't really mix social media and football together. Clearing out my page. Well, I'm just reading his quote. Clearing out my page, not really too crazy, got nothing to do with the Steelers at all. And the posts were restored by Saturday morning. So there you go. There's your social media report today here on TMZ Sports Light.
Here's that attention you ordered, George Pickens.
Bobby, it's always fun catching up with you. Enjoy your football weekend. What do the Giants have here this weekend?
America's Game of the Week.
Oh my God, you're right.
We did our preview pod today, and I'm like, is this game at 1? And they're like, no, 4:30 at America. Like,
sorry.
Stop doing this shit to me.
Yeah.
Stop.
Well, you knew it was coming.
I'm all in on the tank for the Giants.
Sorry, I picked CeeDee Lamb this week to score in our football, who scores a touchdown. So apologize in advance.
Very good one. I picked Kareem Hunt, and I didn't think about it, but they were like, hey, we're posting this now, and it's literally just the first player who came into my head.
Okay. Well,
so I'm a bigger Browns fan than you.
Not true. But you can be one this weekend. We will take on all comers. I want to thank producer Mikey for hanging out with us and setting this up, because that was not easy here in Jersey City, New Jersey. In fact, you should get double pay. We'll talk to Jimmy and Jake about that. Continue to check out the good work of Bobby Skinner and your buddy Pennick, who's been an interesting umpire yet again up here this week.
Who won?
Stop. I can tell you we all won because he was an umpire. Okay. He is walking content for me. As I like to say, he is a slow-moving target. I am Chris Rose. We will see you next week on Football Today.